Hello everyone, time to share with you guys more geopolitical opinions from China. September 9th, Israel launched a precision airstrike on Hamas leadership compound during a meeting about a US-backed ceasefire proposal in Doha. Around 10 bombs were dropped by 15 Israeli jets. Media is saying that 5 or 6 Hamas leaders were killed, but then Hamas said some of them survived. We are receiving now a wave of condemnation from many countries around the world. The responses from China's state media and also social media, in lack of a better word, is vivid, colorful, and brutal, okay? Now, I'm going to share a video with you guys from an independent media source from China, AI translated, a short 10-minute video. It does not represent my opinion nor my channel's opinion, but it does help my global audience to get a rough understanding about what's going on through Chinese people's head right now regarding this particular event in Qatar. Ignore the names in this video, by the way, because the AI software is not good at translating names yet. Viewer discretion advised, okay? Take a look.
Globalization is coming to an end, the spring and autumn period is over, and the warring states period is about to begin. This will not only affect the resources of those small countries that once benefited from globalization as part of the global cooperation supply chain. It will also profoundly affect the future political direction of major countries like China. Just yesterday, an event that seemed insignificant occurred. Israel conducted an airstrike on Doha, the capital of Qatar, which is known as the Middle East's safe zone. The strike killed a group of senior Hamas officials who were discussing peace negotiations there, with the main target being Yahya's potential successor, the chief representative for ceasefire talks, Haya. The reason why this matter appears to be minor is that we are not particularly surprised by Israel's actions of killing Hamas officials. We have become almost numb to it. In today's world, with the rise of global far-right fascism, frequent governmental turmoil, and political assassinations, events that would have shocked us just a few years ago now seem to be met with a significantly higher threshold of acceptance. From the mysterious deaths of many members of Germany's Alternative for Germany party to Japan's far-right rise forcing the Ishiba government's resignation, and then to internal turmoil in countries like Nepal, Thailand, and Laos. These events signal a new era's arrival. I believe the most definitive signal of this era is the recent Israeli airstrike on Qatar's capital. According to a Palestinian authority, this event will mark a significant turning point in global development. Firstly, this assault was sanctioned by President Trump in the Israeli metropolis, and as everyone is aware, he possesses a pronounced inclination to micromanage. Even this attack itself inevitably raises suspicions about whether it was some kind of entrapment by Trump, using the halt of negotiations as bait to lure Hamas into what they believe to be the Middle East safe zone, Qatar, and then capturing them all at once. Objectively speaking, after Iran's complete failure and the contraction of its influence, it is not surprising that Hamas would face attacks and betrayal or even internal reversals. What is shocking is that the location of their attack was Doha, Qatar. Qatar hosts the largest American military base in the Middle East. The Al Udeid Air Base is the largest importer of natural gas to China, shares offshore gas fields with Iran, and firmly resists Saudi control over the Arabian Peninsula. It possesses the most influential media in the Middle East. Al Jazeera is recognized as a hub for negotiations and political asylum by leaders from countries and various organizations across the region. Influential figures from countries and groups like Hamas, the Houthis, the Afghan Taliban, and Iran often choose to stay here for mediation or as a refuge. This is also the location of the United Nations House, where units like UNICEF, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the Development Program are situated. Numerous multilateral summits are held here every year. From health to climate, security, energy, information, and economy. This attack event is like playing World of Warcraft, creating a neutral safe zone, opening the map, and deciding which dungeon to raid at night. Suddenly, a fireball spell from the opposing faction took us out. If we rule out the possibility of a game bug, then there's only one real reason left. The game's internal rules have been changed. The original world order was based on the post-Yalta Agreement global cooperation rules, similar to the spring and autumn period here. There exists an implicit rule based on global order among countries. In the midst of cooperation and conflict, many geopolitically neutral countries like Qatar, Singapore, Switzerland, and Oman have emerged, benefiting from global dividends. They act as a cohesive force, maintaining cooperation and decorum among various countries and interest groups within their regions. No matter how powerful, like the five hegemons of the spring and autumn period, you must act within the rules of this global order and avoid causing issues in neutral zones. This shows respect for the Son of Heaven and the basic attitude of respecting the UN Charter. Neutral countries symbolize a compromise and cooperation of various interests, similar to a geographical buffer, serving as a buffer in ideological, economic, and industrial terms. For a long time, many countries have thrived this way, accepting marginalized figures and gray assets from various nations and building bridges for adversaries to negotiate. The major powers behind the scenes have quietly approved their existence. Building diplomatic ties where cooperation is prioritized over conflict by finding common ground while acknowledging differences. Trump's subtle approval or even behind-the-scenes orchestration of Israel's recent aggressive actions sends a stronger and clearer signal to the world. The United States has now firmly moved towards an isolationist offshore balancing strategy, no longer wanting the world to keep developing together through global cooperation, but instead openly attacking and undermining neutral zones. From now on, the possibility of reconciliation between countries on this planet will increasingly cease to exist. The entire Eurasian continent is about to engage in a battle royale, where every nation must firmly choose sides in the process, either become a servant of the United States or be its enemy. This is the desperate struggle that all imperialist countries throughout history have chosen before their ultimate downfall. This aligns with Trump's push for the U.S. to exit various international groups and his repeated critiques of the United Nations. To reshape the order of domestic interest groups in the U.S., he needs to first disrupt the current world order set by them. Observing the events unfolding in Qatar, countries like Singapore should be the most apprehensive at this moment. In the past, they seemed to navigate skillfully, relying on their strategic geographical position, benefiting from both sides, and considered this to be their national wisdom. There was even a sentiment within our country that advocated learning from Singapore's advanced civilization. Many who consider themselves smart still choose to go there to hedge risks, but capital is ultimately short-sighted. They can win every tomorrow, yet fail to see the disaster looming the day after. The Jews are like this, the Singaporeans are like this, and some capitalists in our country are also like this, the development of countries like Qatar and Singapore. It's the influential figures behind the scenes who want them to prosper. Their prosperity is not built on their own so-called wisdom, but rather, like the Nordic countries, they have become a symbol and totem of global international peace and prosperity. However, once the era of peace turns into an era of conflict, they could instantly go from being model students to having no value for alliances, even becoming expendable. They say if they bomb your capital, they bomb your capital. Oh, by the way, Singapore only has a capital. Although after this attack, the entire Muslim world condemned Israel. In my view, this is just like during the anti-Japanese war, when various warlords condemned Japan, merely a politically correct expression. In reality, these people all have ulterior motives. Saudi Arabia thinks Qatar has taken America's favor, becoming the only Gulf nation not listening to them. This led them to cut diplomatic ties with Qatar, along with the UAE and Egypt. Iran, however, has been working with Qatar on oil and gas resource development. If Qatar gives up its neutrality, it's likely Iran's last oil lifeline could fall into enemy hands. As for Turkey, such geopolitical changes will put it in an even more precarious position where it will be difficult to remain neutral. Furthermore, regarding Trump's increasingly aggressive disruption of the world order, we need to consider two questions. First is the continuity of Trump's policies, and second is how China should adjust its strategy in such a situation. I personally believe that the consistency of Trump's policies is certain. In the current state, the global multilateral order that he has disrupted is very difficult to restore to its original state because building trust and cooperation is difficult, but creating discord is easy even if he steps down in 3 years and is replaced by a Democrat. Restoring much of the lost international order will be tough. In this stage, with the global economy rapidly declining and internal conflicts within countries becoming prominent, unless the United States and China can reconcile and return to jointly leading the world's development, it's likely the path of deglobalization following the mess left by Trump will continue. In this situation, our earlier strategy of finding common ground while keeping differences and pursuing peaceful development needs adjustment for the new environment. This means shifting from a purely benevolent approach to a more pragmatic one, focusing on distant regions. By distant regions, I mean areas far from us, where our military influence is hard to project. We will keep addressing these areas through diplomatic and multilateral means based on principles. Not deeply involved, calling for peace and stability, and those regions close to us that concern our vital interests. For example, in the Asia-Pacific, Central Asia, and South Asia, in the face of the extreme pressure and joint tactics employed by the United States on these regions, we should adopt more pragmatic countermeasures. Taking sides is not what we desire, nor is it what we promote. However, if it becomes a reality, then the countries in these regions must choose to stand with us. Whether through economic incentives, military influence, or maintaining a military presence in these countries, these options can't be entirely ruled out. If a geopolitical area turns into a state of war where order is a matter of life and death, there's no room for appeasement or conciliation. Well, we won't fire the first shot, but that doesn't mean we will never fire. Whether it's Japan, South Korea, ASEAN, or even the Strait of Malacca, when they eventually have to choose sides under US pressure, they can only choose to stand with us or face destruction. We can allow them not to be our friends, but we cannot allow them to be our enemies, that's all. As for those who consider themselves wise by moving all their assets to these so-called beacons of freedom and democracy, they are not as clever as they think. I can only say that the Jews once thought they were very smart, but they all ended up in the gas chambers. A short-sighted, profit-driven mindset inevitably leads every greedy person to rapid destruction. You will perish by what you cherish. Only those who firmly rely on the country for the long term can endure.
Oh my god, stop right there, okay? That's enough. Now, before I share my opinion regarding this event, I want to tell you guys a short story, alright? When Trump and Israel bombed Iran a few months ago, I was on my vacation with my family in Tokyo, so I didn't share any video with you guys at that time. However, I knew a few large social media platforms from China here on YouTube in the English language media space. I have direct contact with their GM. Their analysts spoke openly about their feeling of the bombing of Iran, and what I noticed is that during the following week and months until basically now, their platform had been heavily shadow banned by YouTube. Several of those channels have over 100,000 subscribers, and each of their videos usually have 30,000-40,000 views, and after they reported on Israel, their views dropped to 3,000 basically. I even talked to their tech team, and they said that it had happened before, and it usually takes a few months before YouTube will consider removing their ban. So I need to be extremely cautious when approaching this subject, alright? And also try to be as honest as possible. First, in my opinion, the United States is well aware of the bombing of Qatar by Israeli Air Force, whether Trump knows it or not. That's another story, debatable, alright? As I said before, I don't think the US president has that much power to begin with. Maybe the event took place and then Trump was informed and has to deal with the aftermath. It's possible, but I don't want to get into that argument. The whole denial thing is a joke. when you consider one of the biggest, air base in the Middle East is in Qatar. So they didn't know those fighters from Israel was coming. There was this Chinese military analyst who conducted a study of Qatar's US Air Force base. He concluded that the strength of the US Air Force there is equal to the combined strength of the British, the French, and the Russian Air Force today. Combined, okay? And we're not talking about counting the numbers of fighter jets here. We're talking about combat readiness. That's how powerful the US Air Force is over there. I would be shocked if anyone today still believe. Okay, I'll take that back. I've been shocked too many times since I started this channel. I would be seriously surprised, that would be the word I will be using now, that anyone intelligent in the Middle East believe that the US military in the Middle East today has anything to do with protecting the people and so-called countries in the Middle East from, Iran or from terrorists or anything of that sort. They are colonial military force there to enforce political and economic interests. Saying the US military is in Qatar to, protect the people of the Middle East is like saying the British East India Company stationed troops in India to, safeguard and enrich the Indian people. That's how ridiculous it sounds to the Chinese, at least. Okay, I'm not sure about people around the world. So from the perspective of many Chinese geopolitical analysts, Israel act as a what we Chinese call 白手套. Translate that to Chinese, a white glove. Okay, if you want to murder someone and you don't want to leave your fingerprints everywhere, you wear a white glove before you commit the crime, right? So Israel's action today in the Middle East is a direct representation of the United States geopolitical interests in the region, right? It's basically a common understanding now that anyone in the world today who does not obey or align with US geopolitical objectives is a terrorist, a ruthless dictator, or a drug cartel, right? Or rigging their own elections, something along that line. These are just excuses for the United States to place sanction or use other invasive method to change or eliminate or vassalize countries around the world. So Israel is basically a proxy here of the United States. Definitely there are Israel elites or Jewish elites in the world who align with this imperial interest of the United States. But I'm not blaming the entire population of Israel. Remember, I said multiple times in my channel that I believe geopolitics is just too complicated and too time consuming for 99% of the people in this world to figure out. Doesn't matter which country you're from. So it would be against my own philosophy if I believe the population of Israel is the sole, group of people to be blamed here, Jewish or not. Majority of the people in the greater Middle East are all victims of this US struggle to maintain control over its colonies in the Middle East. Second point, Chinese mentality towards geopolitics is very simple and raw, not sugar-coated like in the West. If you don't have a strong military or nuclear weapon, your sovereignty is not guaranteed. If you have foreign troops, your sovereignty is even less meaningful. I know this is very harsh judgment, but that's the reality of geopolitics and human civilization in general. I have been following some Middle East geopolitical channels from time to time. Their thinking is just different from the Chinese. It is not about good or bad, okay? China is not going to save the Middle East, let's be honest. Russia is not going to save the Middle East. In our mind, true salvation does not come from God or any other foreign country. It comes from your own people, your own leadership, okay? Your desire to stand up by yourself, for yourself. If you are not willing to fight for your own sovereignty and future, no one will. Because other people that come and fight for you will seek payment, which means that you are just swapping one master for another. It's very sad to say there's barely any country in the Middle East qualified to stand as a sovereign nation by Chinese standard. The solution to the Middle East is a military one, as I said it before. My friends in the Middle East need to find the wisdom and strength to stand together, or else your fate will always be in the hands of outsiders. The earlier you find unity, the less suffering you will endure in the long run. That's it for today. Richard signing out.